In today's video, I want to help you understand why your toddler does annoying things sometimes and how important it is for their development. Hi, it's Anna here. Welcome back to my channel, the best place for parents or educators who want to learn and evolve with their children. Before we start today's video, I wanted to ask you all for a small favor. I have put a short survey together and I would be so appreciative if you could fill it in for me. It will give me valuable insights to bring you more relevant content in the future, as well as help me with other potential ventures that I'm thinking about. I've left the link to the survey in the description of this video. Thank you so much in advance for helping me with this. Okay, so in today's video, I want to discuss play schemas in the early years because they are an integral part of child development. And understanding these have really helped me understand my toddlers more, be less frustrated, and ultimately work with my children rather than against them. First, I will explain what these play schemas are and why they happen. And then I will discuss different play schemas one by one and show you how we can support our children through them. So let's start with explaining what schemas are. It's really a fancy word for the urges that children have to do things like climb, throw things, or hide in small places. You may be able to relate to this when you have a need with capital letters for coffee in the morning, or for women who had food cravings during pregnancy. It's a deep desire and urge, and they don't have much control over it. It is really important to understand that these schemas are the building blocks for the brain. It is repeated behavior that actually builds connections in the brain. They are completely natural, uncontrollable, and totally necessary play urges that all children have. They can come at one time in bunches, some are shorter, some are longer, every child is different. It is basically a set of instructions that we need to acquire to understand how things work in the world. It is through trial and error that we get a specific understanding, and this understanding evolves over time through this trial and error until we find the most efficient way of completing a task. So for example, I drop a football, the ball bounces back up. I drop a tennis ball, the ball bounces back up. So now I have a schema that balls bounce. But then one day I drop a ball of Play-Doh and it doesn't bounce. So then I update my schema. Balls that spring back into shape after you squeeze them will bounce. Those that don't, won't. Which works until one day I drop a golf ball. So you get the gist. And still to this day, as adults, we are constantly updating our schemas based on new information that comes to light. For children, schemas come through play, and it is especially noticeable in toddlers. Schemas are such an important part of child development that it is taught to anyone who works with children. And it is such a shame that most parents don't know about them. So now I will go through the 9 play schemas one by one. The first one is called orientation. It is the urge to hang upside down. For example, getting the view from under the table. All 3 of my children have gone through this really cute downward dog yoga pose phase. And I'm sure yours did too. In orientation, your child is learning how to see things from a different point of view. And this important schema builds confidence in many physical activities and games, when it becomes really useful to anticipate how another player might move next, for example. To support orientation schema play, try walking along walls, rolling down hills, climbing up steps, and any kind of movement that requires them to find different heights or positions. Gymnastics, games like Twister, soft play, or a simple trip to the park are also great for exploring different points of view. And of course, there is always climbing trees. The second play schema is called positioning. It is when a child can be seen playing with their toys by lining them up. Children will explore new creative orders to position their items in. So for example, they will be lining up their cars, or stacking unlikely objects together, or create layers of paint or collage, or balance objects on the edge of tables, or overall like working with small objects. Positioning provides early foundations to many skills and activities, from laying the table to creating patterns in math to maintaining neat workbooks in school. To support a blossoming positioning schema, you can try collecting shells and pebbles on the beach or sticks in the garden. For fine motor development, balancing games like Jenga and Connect 4 are great, as is creating patterns with threading beads and simple stacking and constructions with blocks or Lego. The third one is the connection schema. It is centered on the building and destruction of toys and objects. So for example, joining train tracks or building towers with Lego or wooden blocks. sticking things together with tape. These are all signs of this connection schema. Or perhaps your child likes to connect arms with you or someone else to be physically connected somehow. Connecting also includes disconnecting, so building followed by distraction, which is why toddlers usually love to build towers with wooden blocks and then start laughing so hard when they kick it down. And of course, this can be really annoying for all the children when they're building something and their younger brother comes and destroys what they've built. Which is why what I've resorted to doing in my house is to have 2 different play spaces so that my older children, my 7 and 5-year-old, can build whatever they want without having their 2-year-old brother destroy everything for them. The 4th one is called the trajectory schema, and this one is probably the most annoying for us parents. It is the urge to throw things, drop things, and other actions. But it is also things like climbing up and jumping off, which is trajectory of their own body, or putting your hand under running water, interacting with things that are already moving. So it could be your child repeatedly dropping their food from the high chair, or throwing things out of their pram, throwing objects, or jumping off furniture. These are all examples of your child exploring their trajectory schema. They're studying the movement of an object or their own body through the air. My 2-year-old recently went through this phase where he was throwing everything in the air. So understanding that it was completely normal part of his development meant that I didn't fight him because I realized that it was an instinct that I couldn't squash. So instead, when he would be throwing something dangerous, I would actually swap it with something soft, like a softball that I was actually okay with him throwing. So I would tell him, you can't throw this, but you can throw that, and make the swap. And if your child is jumping off furniture, maybe take them outside to allow them to do a lot of jumping around, or build an obstacle course inside with lots of pillows that they can jump on. The 5th schema is the enveloping schema. It is when your child is trying to work out what happens when they wrap or hide an object. Can I still see it? Can I feel it? What happens if I wrap it in a translucent fabric? If you think your child is going through this schema, here are a few things that you can do to support their investigation. You can give them Russian dolls, nesting toys or shape sorters, encourage them to wrap up their dolls in blankets. You can play doctor or vet with lots of bandages, and wrap up parcels. Christmas is great for envelopers. The 6th schema is called the enclosing container schema. It is closely related to the enveloping schema that we just discussed, but with its own distinct character. It is all about creating boundaries. Whereas enveloping was about wrapping an object, often removing it from sight, enclosing simply contains it. It's the difference between a doll bundled up in blankets and a horse in a paddock. When children enclose, they are learning that objects or ideas can be contained in a discrete space, and that anything outside that is a separate entity. Enclosers likes to draw faces, placing the eyes and mouth inside, hair and ears outside. Eventually, enclosing leads to letter formation. It's also central to drawing faces and bodies. The 7th schema is called transporting. It is the urge to carry many things in your hands at one time, in jars, in buckets, or even better, in containers with wheels. Is your child often very busy carrying goods from one place to another? Is the walker always full of bricks or the basket full of teddies? If this sounds familiar, then your child is exploring their transportation schema. In transportation, children like to simply move items from point A to point B. Transporting is very rewarding for the young child since they gain a lot of pleasure from completing a task and seeing something happen as a result of their hard work. You can support the transportation urge by having a lot of useful transport tools around, like pushchairs, baskets, walkers, bags, and containers. Transporters can be very helpful people, so it is great to enroll your toddler's help if you need to unpack the groceries, for example. Gardening and water play are also great opportunities to explore transporting. The 8th schema is called rotation. This is when the child is twirling around, rolling down the hill, or just playing with their hair with a pencil even. So it's anything circular like wheels, but also being flung around by an adult, or watching the washing machine while it's on, or playing ring-a-rosy. The last schema is called transformation. And as the name suggests, it is the urge to transform things, like seeing how different materials change, but also mixing substances together to see what happens. So for example, holding all your food in your mouth for a long time to see what it turns into, or mixing your juice with your fish pie, or water with dirt, or helping with mixing the bread dough. So I know that my toddler absolutely loves to make concoctions in the garden by mixing water with dirt, with leaves, with rocks. Another really great thing that you can show them is how water becomes an ice cube in the freezer, and then how that ice cube melts in the sun. They will be fascinated with this. So now that we have explored each play schema, I wanted to end this video by explaining why it is quite important for us parents to know about them. And the obvious answer is that it's not about doing more. In fact, our children will actually not need our help to do this at all. They will develop these completely naturally without our input. But knowing about these play urges can really help us understand as parents why our children can be so determined for doing certain things sometimes. And especially when these things can be so annoying for us, like throwing things in the air or throwing their food off the table. If you don't understand that this is a natural instinct and urge that they can literally not fight, then you might think that they are being extremely difficult and they are doing things on purpose to annoy you. So the point is that once you understand these play schemas, you can bring more understanding and empathy to the relationship. And then you can actually redirect your child, because it's not about the action, it's about satisfying the urge. And there are different ways of still satisfying that urge whilst also ensuring that things are being safe for everyone. So if the action is dangerous or harmful, or if it's really annoying you because you are an important part of the relationship as well, it is very important to understand that your job is to redirect it and to find a more suitable outlet for the urge. And that way, the urge can still fulfill its role in your child's development, but in an acceptable way. And also, the most important thing to understand is that your child's urge will diminish over time as they experience things. So the quicker we can allow these urges for our children, the quicker they will pass. Because once the concept has been learned and mastered, they lose interest and they move on to the next thing. That's it for today. I hope you will find this information helpful, and please also let me know in the comments if you've noticed your toddlers doing any of these play schemas recently. I'd love to know. Thanks for watching and keep growing!